Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. This is the Catalyst Astrology Report. Usually we do the full week on Fridays in this live broadcast, but we're going to look just at the weekend because, quite honestly, it's enough to go over. So let's get out of studio mode here. All right. So welcome to Catalyst Energies. Welcome back to my subscribers, my supporters. Thank you so much for being here. You truly are the lifeblood of this channel, and I appreciate your support in your own journey as well as the collective journey in general. And if you're new here, welcome. It's so great to have you here. And as always, I like to remind people that whenever you interact with content like this from independent content creators, that means people who are not sponsored by advertisers, people who do not buy subscriptions or views. When you interact with their content like this, by subscribing, by liking the video, by sharing, by even commenting and joining the conversation, it actually does support this message and this content to be spread out to a wider audience and to be viewed by a wider audience. So if you find this helpful, inspiring, and useful, right, other people likely will as well. And so I appreciate it and thank you in advance for any support that you offer. Also, too, if you want to monetarily support this work, this is my offering, but donations are gladly accepted in order to keep this work going. You can go to Subscribestar. It's in the link below, and you can subscribe to my channel for $3 a month. I would like to offer exclusive content for those subscribers, and that is coming. But I don't want to overcommit myself knowing that my personal life is about to gather a lot of my attention. So you can still support this work so that I can be here daily with the transmissions, weekly with the astrology, and we can all still be connecting together even as things take a very interesting turn. During this eclipse portal, we're still here, aren't we? The new moon, solar eclipse, the annular solar eclipse that is where it is not, the sun is not completely blocked out. There is a ring of fire. That's something really important to consider through all of this. The ring of fire, a halo around what normally would be a total blocking of the sun in that moment. So we're still in this eclipse portal from the full moon. We're still in the lunar cycle that started with a new moon in Taurus, right? The white dove flying over troubled waters. The opportunity for each of us to plant that seed within us, to create and to find that hope and peace and that symbol of hope and peace and really cultivate it within ourselves. It's not going to come necessarily and exclusively from outside of us. It is going to come from within and then be expressed and reflected back to us. And the karmic confrontation over this weekend is substantial. We've talked about it a lot coming up to it because we have Mars in Cancer will be in an opposition to a retrograde Pluto. Everything about that particular degree of Cancer is about a karmic readjustment. Venus in Cancer by the end of the weekend will also be in a position in Cancer that does represent as well a karmic adjustment. And they're on two separate ends of this Cancerian energy of protection, of the consolidation of our personal power, our home, and the familial matrix. And that does extend past our family of origin, right? It absolutely represents it, but it represents those familial bonds that really hold us and our self-esteem, our self-worth, and where the personality really starts to develop is in that Cancerian and fourth house area. And so to have Venus and Mars, the emperor, the empress coming together in Cancer, even though they are on opposite sides, they are both going to represent some measure of karmic confrontation and adjustment over the weekend coming out into Monday. And so we're just going to focus. We're going to focus on the charts of the weekend. And there is intuitive message transmission that came through. And this is a heavy transmission. I'm not exactly, I wouldn't say that I'm not pleased to offer it, but it's heavy. And oftentimes the bitter medicine is the most potent and effective. And, we are going to be collectively be facing and potentially swallowing a very bitter pill. Now, some people may, have been ready for this for a long time. And I want to share a personal nugget of wisdom, not necessarily from me, although I have experienced this in my life though, but something that was actually communicated to me by my partner years ago. So I want to share that with you as we embark on this journey of the weekend's astrology, this karmic confrontation, and this need for some real bravery and courage within us. So in 2015, that was an incredible year. I had not really fully gotten into astrology. I actually was guided when Saturn came into Capricorn in late 2017 to begin this journey of charting and getting deeper into the astrological components as part of one of the main modalities of my work. And had I been as steeped in it if I had been as steeped in it then as I am now, I surely would have had so much more insight into what may have been transpiring and the potential meaning behind it. But needless to say, in 2015, it was a rough year for me and my partner and various members of our collective family. We lost 4 family members that year. And one of the things that came out very strongly during that time, and a piece of wisdom that I cannot overstate, that came through my partner because he lost his father that year, and one of the things that he had said that I've never forgotten and will carry with me for the rest of my life, and I assure you that this is a piece of wisdom that's going to be relevant in the coming days and weeks and months, especially when October comes and we are finishing this eclipse cycle into November, December. And we also are Saturn and Pluto both come out of their retrograde in October. So keep that in mind as we are going through this time frame into the summer, into the next season, and then coming out of it in the fall. One of the things that he said to me, and is absolutely, I hold this very close to me now, is that, his father was had a chronic debilitating health issue for a long time. And so he and the family, in their own various ways, were really preparing themselves on, at least intellectually, for his transition, for his passing, because of his illness being degenerative, being chronic, being consistently being degenerative. And we all deal with this in our own way, but one of the things the main thing that came out of it for him that he imparted to me is that you can prepare yourself intellectually and mentally for years, which is what he did, years for an event to pass, whatever it is. Nothing will ever prepare you or us. Nothing will ever prepare you for the lived experience of that moment. And so when his father did finally pass away, there you go. Nothing prepares you for that moment. Nothing prepares you emotionally and spiritually and even in your own body physically for that moment, no matter how much you are anticipating it, no matter how much you are intellectually preparing for it. And I just want to make that very clear as we are about to embark on this weekend and these incredibly potent transits, because nothing does really prepare you. Nothing will prepare you for the lived experience of a moment, no matter how much you have intellectually prepared for it. And that's a really important thing to make clear, because I feel as if that, some people are going to be blindsided and sideswiped and certainly having a very strong reaction to these adjustments, these karmic readjustments that are really going to provide a much needed catharsis, right? But there are many other people that are, have been intellectually preparing for these moments for a long time and even feel like they've emotionally prepared or spiritually prepared, but nothing really prepares you for the lived experience, which is where we learn the most, right? We learn the most about ourselves and about our role and our larger role within this life in those moments of the lived experience, because that's where the real wisdom actually is. So it seems really important to point this out as we are going into this weekend and what is likely in store, although it's really hard, timelines are not fixed. There are fixed points in time, which the astrological calendar absolutely lays out for us. There are fixed points in time. These cycles are fixed points in time. These transits are fixed points in time. When they connect to each other, when they make these angles, when they come through their own cycles. But the timeline itself, which is really just the resonance of the geometry of the matrix unfolding in response to all of this stuff, that is always fluid and dynamic because it requires our participation. So we can prepare all we want, and it's important that we do so we can hold this space and anchor ourselves, but just be prepared that you may find yourself responding and reacting in ways you perhaps haven't anticipated. So we're going to go through the astrology, and we're going to look at the moon transit specifically through this weekend to really give us a sense of how we may respond and how we can best utilize those moon transits. Even though they are very transient emotional experiences, we can use them and be aware of how things may unfold and how we can be a conscious co-creator in this experience rather than being blindsided or having emotional reactions that we're not prepared for. I think it's really important to give yourself the space and the acknowledgement that nobody's really going to be fully prepared, and creating a container for that experience to naturally and organically unfold, I think is probably some of the best medicine we could have. So with that being said, let's get right into the charts, okay? And we can get a sense of where we're going, what's going on, these fixed points in time, and then we will look at this incredible reading. And I swear to you, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, you can. You certainly can. I mean, I could have just handpicked all of those cards and put them there just so I could give you this message. But that's not how I roll, and you know that. So let's look at the chart for right now, and we'll just go through it, okay? Let's see. Where are we here? My bad. 1 second, guys. I'm going to make sure that we're exactly where we need to be. There we go. All right, so here is our chart for June 4th. It is Friday. Our moon is, in fact, in Aries, as you see. So let me check in with the stream. There we go. Let's check in here. And we are going to, hi, kitty. Oh yeah, that was one thing I meant to bring up too that came out very strong. And this, I'll reiterate this in a little bit, but this is a very Lyran heavy transmission today. They came through very strongly in my meditation this morning as I was receiving the information and the transmission. Very strong. And if you've had a Lyran stars, if you had a starseed reading with me, or you have been, hi buddy, you are familiar with the starseed work, or if you watch the presentations that I've had so far, then you know that the Lyrans, their primary function here in this incarnation, right, in material form, is they hold a resonance of fearlessness in regards to the material and physical experience, right? It's because the Lyrans are so old and ancient in our galactic history that they have incarnated so many times into physicality that they are so comfortable and so natural in it, and they really enjoy the physical experience, and they carry with them a certain amount of courage and fearlessness as they address things. And I feel like that they are here to support us as we are going through what you'll see is a very material karmic readjustment in some ways. So, and that'll become a lot more clear when we look at the cards and the intuitive message. For now, we're going to look at something a little bit more palpable, which is cycles of time, right? Cycles of time. So here we are with June 4th. This is today, Friday. So we have our moon in Aries. So it's pretty clear here that there are a couple things about to happen. Number one, we have a sextile and a trine with the nodal axis of her nodal axis of the moon, right? Here's our moon in Aries right here. A trine with a trine, hi guys, a trine, these cats, they're all over it. A trine with the South Node in Sagittarius, which is in a conjunction with Antares, the heart of the Scorpion, and also a sextile with the North Node in conjunction, hi buddy, with Aldebaran, which is in Gemini. So, and then from there, the moon is going to come into a conjunction with Chiron in Aries. So let's talk about this because this is setting the stage here. So we talked about, Aries being the subjective experience, being the territory of Mars, of being about our desire to actualize ourselves and the potency to create whatever we want from this potential, right? This is the seed, and all of the potential is encapsulated in the seed, right? It holds all of the DNA. It holds all of the mechanisms that stimulate and catalyze the growth of the seed. It's all in the seed. It requires a medium, Taurus, the soil, in some way to activate this process. A seed is not going to grow without an objective reality of which to grow within. So that's something to keep in mind, that Aries is about potential. So everything emotionally is here for us. Now, there is a lot of ambition and drive and flared emotions potentially with the moon in Aries, right? We're talking about our internalized emotional landscape, our intuitive nature, our ability to emotionally and feeling-based connection outside of time, even potentially, because it's not about the material world. It's about our internal experience and how we feel about it and how we experience it. So there's a lot of potential here within each of us right now. We're really feeling into it, which is giving us a lot of, positive and openness here, all the potential, all of the desire to be, but sometimes it's a little bit too much in Aries, right? Like I said, tempers can flare, people can get really emotionally worked up and angry. So that's something to consider because the moon is not going to move into Taurus until the 6th. And at that point, the moon is really moving into her balsamic phase at that point, because the eclipse will have a Gemini moon and a sun in Gemini, of course, which is happening, like I said, on the 10th. And in Mercury will be in conjunction with the sun, so Mercury Cazimi in conjunction with the sun, so that we are about to have, when we get to this point of the eclipse next week, there is going to, brilliant realizations, even as we are going back over old territory. So that's something we'll explain and talk about way more with that report. This is why we're only doing the weekend, because not only is it plenty to talk about right now, I want to really give some time and energy and focus on this eclipse cycle and the full lunar month that is started off with this eclipse. So, but for now, here we are talking about today. So we have there's a really strong power to, there's a really strong desire to integrate our collective desire for our own self to be order, our own emotional self to find some level of order, right? And our ego consciousness becomes this centralizing force in this moment, right? Where we're pulling together, we're integrating things formally, right? Our consciousness is like, okay, I'm doing the actual work to bring all of these things together, just like an awareness that everything is encapsulated in the seed. It's the ego consciousness that wants that. It wants all of this. So the sextile, right? We talked about 60-degree angle, north node to the north node of her own north node, right? The moon's north node, this karmic axis of our soul's evolution. We know we're embarking on new territory. This is where we're being directed and driven. This is what is enticing us. The head of the dragon here is the moon's north node. So we can really pull it together emotionally and invest that into this drive to get to this new open territory, this pioneering spirit. Because if we don't, in some ways, emotionally pull it together, right, into all of the potential, by the time we get to the end of the weekend and we are ready to utilize our imagination to regain some sort of lost opportunity when it's in square to Mars and Pluto, who are both going to be in opposition to each other, when we get to that point, we won't really be able to do that, will we? That square will overpower our emotional capacity to actually use our imagination to create something or to activate that seed point. So right now, it's really about, there's a lot of power that we can gain from formally integrating all of these aspects that are disordered, right? That are just potential and desire. So we can invest that into where we are headed. Now, the trine, right? The trine is something that we don't have to really do much for those two things to really support each other. It's a fire trine. So it's got this creative element, this transformational element, right? Cardinal fire and mutable fire in Sagittarius, which is, in this particular Antares, right? In a trine to Antares, there is a sense of using our bodies, connecting to our bodies to feel the truth as much as it stings, right? The heart of the Scorpion is really getting into the nature of our alchemical power. And sometimes we do have to take in the poison as like a homeopathic remedy. And somebody, it was part of the Mercury retrograde summit, and one of the presenters had mentioned taking a homeopathic dose of news, and I really loved that analogy. And this is what this feels like: taking a homeopathic dose of this sting of the venom, right, of Scorpio, which is the painful truth, and in our bodies, right? So we know that the South Node is where we're headed from. It's our karmic history. We've mastered this energy already, so we can use this as a momentum to head. The tail of the dragon is moving back and forth like a rudder, giving momentum forward. But it's not where we're headed, and there's a lot of release here that needs to be. Just like we had, now remember, this was we had a South Node lunar eclipse of a huge paradigm release. And so in some ways, we can feel it. We can feel it in our body, the sting and the pain, and take in this homeopathic dose that allows us to move towards somewhere new lands opening, right? And really applying this desire for integration and order within our own self. We can apply this to where we are going and use what we feel in our body, as much as it's painful, to know that is a dose of medicine, to get, to stimulate the body's healing. That's what homeopathy is already about. You get these micro doses of of certain things that will stimulate the body's immune system. It's kind of, it's not like vaccines are new. It's based off ancient medicine. It's just that, anyway, we know. So they're right there with the moon and her own nodal axis. You can see here where we can utilize this energy. Next, the moon then comes in a conjunction. This is today still, right? This is this afternoon. The moon comes into a conjunction with Chiron and Aries, right? We talked about this yesterday, the unexploded bomb at a social protest. It is so frustrating because as much as we want to order our own consciousness, our own ego consciousness, it wants to be in control, which is not a negative thing. It just is what it is. It's a natural part of life that we have an ego consciousness. It protects us. It directs us. It gives us a framework to interact with the physical world. But this moment here, an immature evaluation of the possibility of transforming suddenly the status quo. Oh my gosh, right? And with Chiron here sitting at this degree, it's been here for a minute. It's going to be here for a couple more minutes, right? Chiron moves very slowly. It's got a 50-year orbit. So, we have been feeling the vulnerability and the wounding around this, because we want things to happen suddenly. That's the thing about Aries. Cardinal fire is action, right? Going for it. And we want things to change, and it just doesn't work that way. And so there's a frustration here that is going to be felt very directly with wanting things to transform suddenly, that have been in place for a really long time. And whether or not they will or won't is going to be determined later. But I will say that in the moment when the moon meets Chiron, we have become very emotionally aware of the vulnerability and that victim savior narrative that Chiron really represents, and the wounded healer aspect. We're going to want things to change suddenly, and we're going to have to contend with what that feels like when it doesn't, right? The adolescent frustration. It's very adolescent in this position. So some feels today's, my friends. Some feels that are going to be, again, I told you, the bitter medicine is usually the most effective. We go on from there. From there, the moon then comes into a sextile, as we see here, with a retrograde Saturn. So this is a moment, and at the very same time, is in a quincunx to Vesta and Virgo. Track Vesta right now, because by tomorrow, right now, Vesta is sitting at a Syrian starseed marking. By tomorrow, it will move into a Lyran position, and it'll stay there for a couple of days, right? Vesta, the goddess of the hearth flame. She's often characterized as just the flame. She's the goddess of the Vestal Virgin. She has been supporting us in this effort of our discipleship in some way to become a vessel that is of service to others. That is what the Vestal Virgins represent. All of their energy is put towards this process, and this is why they're considered virgins or celibate, because their role is not in regards to anything domestic or otherwise. They are completely giving themselves to this process. And Vesta is been here for a while, and now she's about to move, and simultaneously at a Syrian marking, and a well-aspected Syrian marking, and a Lyran marking. And here's where the Lyran aspect is going to come in, giving us, access to courage, to fearlessness, to a fierce independence, to enjoy the ride, essentially, and to know what it takes to enjoy the ride and to build something, right? So the moon, while in a quincunx, right, that 150-degree angle that requires us to adjust ourselves, but also a sextile to Saturn. So we may be frustrated, right? But right from there, we then take that frustration and realize that it is, it's applicable in a way where that kundalini starts to coil, right? The coiling of the serpent between a man and a woman, for instance, right? It's the ritualization of duality and relationship. Relationship is when duality comes together, right? There's that Gemini card, the lovers, but this is about how each of us has this potential in us, right? Aries is a seed point. And so the coiling of the serpent, it hasn't released. It's just coiling. It's potential energy. It's potential creative energy, within us. And so this sextile to Saturn, again, we can retrograde Saturn, right? Going, constricting in some ways that tunnel that we pass through in order. Somebody had said it, like a birth canal, but it's just, instead of contracting and opening, it's narrowing and make it even harder. And that light at the end of the tunnel is getting more direct, more focused, more singular, but it's also getting smaller as a result of that. So the narrow, right? Eye of the needle. Wow. So the sextile with the moon, we can apply this to this nature that Saturn is representing right now, that we're in this process of potential energy within us, the coiling of the kundalini, getting ready in some ways, knowing that it is within each of us, this potential within each of us. And then we can apply that, we can invest that into Saturn, because it really is suggesting here that it's really not time, that we're again preparing for this process. And what will transpire over the weekend, whatever it is part of the catharsis that will come up, that is going to then stimulate eventually later in the fall, shooting through this tunnel, right? But in the meantime, it is becoming, you know what I mean? This constriction is making it more and more obvious what can't fit, right? So in the meantime, and as much as Vesta is supporting this deep connection to ancestral roots, knowing that our root system is really what supports and nourishes the growing seed, ultimately, we will have to adjust ourselves in some way to where this is, because we are each individually just tapping into the potential energy of our creative power, the Kundalini energy. So we can apply that to where Saturn is, especially in its retrograde, where it's getting really frustrating, but also very illuminating in a way that this can't go, this can't go, this can't go, it can't fit. It can't fit. And there's a reason. And we are, going back over this territory of what can't fit with Saturn. And Saturn is authoritarian. Saturn is crystallization. Saturn is the Lord of time and karma. There's no getting around Saturn. It just is what it is. And we have to go back. There's so much retrograde energy right now with Mercury in the mix that we have no choice, really. We always have a choice, but we can resist this, or we could harness this time. So from there, the moon comes into a sextile, right? Almost right away, within the next hour or two, comes into a sextile with the sun in Gemini, coming into that very last degree of the first half of discovery of Gemini. So we also see here that, I can't wait to show you the reading. There's just so much here. We have the ability to weave this blanket around us, and what it does, we weave it and we wrap ourselves in it, which is really a realization of wholeness and fulfillment. And we are weaving it together, right? And when we wear it, it's a projection into our everyday lives, that we realize that there's wholeness and fulfillment, right? It's a ceremonial blanket that's being weaved. It's a web that's being weaved and that we wear around us. And this sextile to the sun, at this very last degree of Gemini, the first half of Gemini, where we are addressing in a lot of ways that any type of subjective experience, any kind of subjective discovery that we make or we have, really needs to stand the test of objectivity, right? That is part of the Gemini archetype anyway, is that we need to talk to each other. We need to actually take our experiences and apply them to other people's experiences by communicating and seeing if they are in fact the same. And so it's one thing to have this phenomenal dream about a situation. It's quite another to pass it off as as objective reality or something that will come to pass without actually having other people have the same dream. So this has come up quite a bit in different ways, where people who are in this type of work or doing these types of work, you can see that there is a legitimate cohesion and familiarity, and that people are getting the same messages, just with different words, right? Different ways of describing it, their own channel. It comes through our own filters, but it's very similar. And the sun, we express the fullness of who we are creatively through the sun. And we can really, I feel like that we do need to talk to each other. Remember, that was yesterday with that trine with Saturn, right? The telepathy, being able to get outside of all of the filters that are imposed upon us. And this comes from all walks of reality, right? All walks of life, all corners, right? Social distinctions, even physical. I mean, the internet is great for this, right? But we also have to accept that the internet is also meant to curate the information, to collect data about us for certain reasons, and also realize that we can use that as direct connection. And this is really, again, was very well aspected. It was a trine to Saturn. So it's important that we're talking to each other, like directly. And it's important that we're getting direct gnosis, right? Knowledge, information, without it being curated, without it being mitigated, without some other type of filter. And this happens in the astral. Just keep that in mind. This is why people end up channeling their own ego consciousness, thinking that they're channeling something else. I mean, we have to be, we have to be able to, it has to stand the test of objectivity. That is just how, this is just how it works. And so this sextile with the moon in Aries and the sun in Gemini today. Again, this is an investment opportunity. We can weave this reality of wholeness and fulfillment and project it out from us, knowing that it's all within us. And again, this can really be invested into a conversation that we all can have with each other about what this actually looks like. And in fact, if we do this, if we project this weaving out so that people see it, it's like a signal, right? It's a signal to other people like, hey, I have the same type of, I'm wrapping myself in this same potential as well. And then we start to see it unfold. Wow. There is a lot here that can support us in this process, that is, like I'm telling you, very cathartic, and very, karmic confrontation, right? So in these moments here, we see how we can really connect to each other and really express ourselves through that communication, right? And knowing that we can invest our own internalized personal experience of weaving our reality of wholeness and fullness and projecting it out. Okay, so that is a lot of today's energy. The moon is also going to be in a trine with asteroid Juno, which is retrograde. We talked about this too, that we really are taking a very close look at our commitments, our contracts, what it means to be committed and loyal and to whom. And in Sagittarius, it's about our collective belief systems. Are we committed? And especially with this South Node total lunar eclipse, are we committed? Is it worth committing ourselves and being loyal in some ways to these collective paradigms, that we really are being asked to let go of? So Juno in retrograde, we've really been considering this, I think, and really going over it with a fine-tooth comb, hopefully, if we're taking advantage of these transits. So when the moon comes into a trine with Juno at 17 degrees Aries, 17 degrees Sagittarius, we have the ability to go within and transform what seems like a natural lack of potency into inner serenity. It's about pulling in. And we're going to see this in the reading too, about pulling in, acknowledging and accepting a contractual moment here, especially because the moon is in fact waning in its cycle, in her cycle. So there is... Sometimes we do have to pull in and be very quiet in order to really understand if this collective paradigm that we're all kind of creating the reality under is worth being committed to and contractually obligated to and loyal to, right? We do have to consider that. All right. So that's a lot of today. We're going to this chart. So let's move on to, now we're in Saturday. So we'll look at that right now. So Saturday the 5th, this is where things start to get a little wonky, don't they? All right. So Saturday the 5th, let's just check in and make sure everything is going well. Yes. All right. Dun, 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 dun. I have too many things open. All right, so now we're looking at the 5th. This is tomorrow. This is Saturday. This is, like I said, where things get wonky, don't they? Okay, so our moon is still in Aries for the duration of the day. The first thing that we're going to look at, actually, is a moon in a sextile with Mercury retrograde. And right after that, the moon is going to conjunct the dwarf planet of Eris, the goddess of discord, right? She's been sitting at 25 degrees Aries now for a very long time. Eris is out past Pluto. She has a 500 plus year orbit around the sun. Pluto has like a 220 something orbit, I never remember these kinds of things. Even as a student, you know, in academia, even in grammar school, like dates and stuff, just never stick. And it's the same thing here. Like specific numbers, they don't always very much stick. It's concepts. Well, you know, Sagittarius stellium, right? So concepts really stick, but details tend to get lost because I have absolutely no Gemini in my chart, except for my 5th house cusp, of course. So the moon in a sextile here to Mercury is retrograde, right? We know Mercury is retrograde, and we're going to talk about where the fixed star locations of Mercury are, because it's really important to consider where it's at, right? It's in conjunction with all the belts of Orion, or all of the belt of Orion, all the stars in the belt of Orion, and then and a fixed star fact, PHACT. And we've talked about this before and why this is really important. So we will get there. But let's talk about these transits first. So Mercury is in retrograde. We are really looking at the use of inhibiting circumstances to transcend our environment, to practice and to show our ability to actually use these circumstances to transcend our environment, right? That is very Gemini and the 3rd house, our environment, our immediate environment that we're in. So this moon here in a sextile in late Aries is about allowing the wind to blow in, right? The spirit, right? That is the wind in a lot of ways. The spirit to blow in and to blow open these curtains, and it looks like a cornucopia. So we know that what we are going over, and maybe some realizations that come along with this retrograde motion, and, you know, going over our notes, going over and reviewing things in terms of our immediate environment, our communication, our intellectual pursuits, right? The empirical information that we've been consuming in a lot of ways. We're going back over it right now, and we can, it's like Mercury is allowing the blow of the wind into our own self, right? The open window, right? The window to the soul. So the window is open. The curtains are like our translucent mind, and it blows in and fills us, right? With all of this potential, all of this abundance. Okay. So Mercury in its retrograde is going to allow, and we can invest this energy into taking in this information rather than continuing to output or to take in new information, right? Mercury is retrograde. So emotionally, personally, in our intuitive and feeling-based landscape, blowing it in and allowing ourselves to be filled, right, in an abundant way. And right after that, the moon then is in a conjunction with Eris. And so so we already know that she's the goddess of discord. She rolls the golden apple into the party because she wasn't invited. And she's like, I'm going to start some shit. And really, it's the representation that you can't keep chaos out. It's part of the natural, it's entropy, and homeostasis is also a duality that is embedded in our universe. You know, there is balance and homeostasis, but there can only be that if there's the opposite of that, which is chaos, right? Chaos cannot be kept out of our lives. And that's what that story really represents. And it brings out all of the shit that is usually hidden under the veneer of who we project out, right? You see how all the goddesses and the gods all thought that the apple was for them, right? And they start fighting with each other. So Eris in 25 degrees Aries is about gaining experience at 2 levels of being, right? That we exist in 2 places at once. There's a duality again, and possibly in chaos and balance, and we can get new potential from this moment. So the moon is in conjunction with Eris. We have been inundated with the winds of retrograde Mercury coming in, blowing open the window, taking the shape of this cornucopia within us emotionally and intuitively. And then right after that, bam, we come into conjunction with Eris, where the chaos really starts to make itself known. And this is going to kick it off, right? Because what do we have right after that? Well, then we have Mars is then in its opposition to Pluto. And one second, guys. The sun, as much as I love it, is blinding me right this second. I'm sure that has double meanings right now. So we have the Mars in its opposition to Pluto retrograde. This is the storm in the canyon. This is the karmic confrontation with Mars in Cancer, right? We have to confront and deal with a social upheaval that risks destroying everything that we have built in this canyon. But the canyon itself will protect us to a certain extent. And we have Mars here giving us courage, bravery, protection of what is important to us, right? Where are we actually loyal? Where do we belong? What is that matrix of emotional bonds that holds our self-esteem and our vulnerability so that we can be free to be those things, to be vulnerable, and to really develop the character? We're going to really see what we're made of when this happens, because the opposition here, right? We want to find the fulcrum, the midpoint. Retrograde Pluto is going back over all of the stuff since March 2020. Well, it's pretty obvious what's been happening since March 2020. So Pluto is going back over all of it. All you have to do is watch the news cycle, and you know that what's coming up around what started in March 2020, at least in the United States, is being going deeper and lifting more out that needs to be addressed. We didn't get all of it the first time, and this is where these retrogrades really come in handy. So this is destroying so much of the pathway up to our ascension. In Capricorn, the tread pathway over generations of sages and teachers that have gone up to the top of the mountain, right? To get to this pinnacle of spiritual awareness and, this upreaching that it represents. I mean, Pluto is just like, destroying it all for the sake of creating something new, of course. But this tension with Mars is going to come through and be the storm, and at the same time is going to allow us to weather the storm, to hold the energy of the storm. Oh my gosh, coming through. So this happens. And then right from here is when, or at the very same time, you see that Mercury is in a square with Neptune as well. And we talked about this. This is not the first square that Mercury and Neptune have had, but now that it's retrograde, it's coming back to this point. We should go back and find exactly when that was before. It wasn't that long ago, because Mercury just started its retrograde. So let's see here. That started on the 29th. Mercury was last in a square with, when was it? Sorry, guys. Oh, yes, the 22nd of, we had the moon in Libra, the 22nd, and it was the day before Saturn went retrograde. So go back and see what's going on for you at that point, because I guarantee you, we're readdressing it. Okay. And here we are. So 24 degrees of Gemini is the same thing, the use of inhibiting circumstances for the development of character and a transcendent approach to the environment. But now it's retrograde and it's square to Neptune, which is like, you know what? We all need to know exactly what our place is here. We have to be realistic about our limitations. We have to accept our dharma, and we have to apply that to some sort of interdependent living amongst each other, right? This was also strongly reflected when Mars in Cancer was in a trine here. So when that happened, we got a really strong structural support with who it is that we're meant to enact our dharma with. And Mars at that position was really very direct about it. So, and protective, very protective about it. So now that it's in, that Mercury is going back over and squaring Neptune in this next degree, right? Because it wasn't the same degree that it was squaring before. Neptune has since moved forward. Mercury's moving backwards. Well, it's not technically moving backwards, but from our perception, it is moving backwards, which makes us pay attention to it more, because we're like, whoa, that looks like it's moving backwards, but I know that's not true. So what is this square at the same time that Mars is in this opposition to Pluto, right? We have to be realistic with our dharma and our limitations. And as much as we want to use these inhibiting circumstances in the realm of our mind in order to transcend our environment, this square is really going to challenge that. We are going to have to be in the environment fully and unconditionally, which is what Neptune and Pisces pretty much does, right? This is going to be, there's no getting around how this is going to feel. I think I made that pretty clear at the very beginning. Now I'm showing you in the chart how this is actually a fixed point in time that is impacting these types of experiences. So we have Mars opposite Pluto, we have Mercury retrograde square Neptune, right? This is so much confusion, right? So much confusion and so much like, just confusion. And I mean, if Mercury was in a conjunction with Neptune, then we could be like, not even realize how confused we are. But right now with this square, cross purposes, right? Change is inevitable. Mars opposite Pluto, change is inevitable. You have to find the balance point. And then from there, this is where we get to make some decisions. By the end of Saturday, we are going to find that the moon squares both Pluto and Mars in their respective positions at the same time, right? Because they're only like 5 minutes apart. So here's our moon in Aries, square to, so it's a T-square, right? We have a T-square with the moon, Mars, and Pluto. So what is the T-square? You see the opposition, and then that point that they're both square to is really how we release the tension. Well, what is 27 degrees of Aries? It's real simple. Through imagination, a lost opportunity is regained, okay? So here's the thing. Opposition is already its own tension. The moon might be squaring both of these places, but it releases the tension between them. And so it still represents a moment of change that we have to lean into this discomfort of these cross purposes. But this does show us that within us and in our emotional landscape, our feeling based, and when we feel something, we are experiencing it. And when we experience something, that is really how we can, it's from that experience that generates the energy to manifest something different. So this moment here, we can regain a lost opportunity. We can use our imagination to find the balance point with this opposition that is incredibly disruptive, incredibly cathartic. And we can use this. We can use this in order to create something new within ourselves, right? To activate and to stimulate that seed point through our imagination, right? And what is imagination but the landscape in which we manifest from, right? If we can imagine it, it exists somewhere on some timeline, right? So by the end of Saturday, for as disruptive and incredible as it may be, and these oppositions, especially with Mars and Pluto, they don't move that fast. So this will be here for a couple of days, but it's exact tomorrow. This moon T-square is going to be where we can release that tension, using our imagination, embodying the potential for creation within us. Okay. Wow. And as we move on to Sunday, here we go. Our moon moves into Taurus. And, we know that the moon is exalted in Taurus. That means it's powerful. It likes to be there. It's familiar territory. It's not home. It's not the rulership, but it's somebody, Lucky Phil, I don't know if he's watching or not, but if Lucky Phil's watching, he made this statement, and it was awesome that it's like a foreign royal king or queen, royalty in a land, right? They're still royal, they're still sovereign, and they're welcomed, and they're still very powerful, but it's in a foreign land. So that's where exaltation really makes itself known, is in that dynamic. So we know that We know that the sun now is in a conjunction with Rigel. And so we have a lot of conjunctions with Orion. Okay, we have Mercury obviously still in conjunction with the belt of Orion, and now the sun is coming into a conjunction with, and it has been, but now it's more exact with Rigel, which is the left foot of Orion. So again, there's a lot of courage and there's a lot of bravery and warriorship and the Orion starseed nature that is very much supporting our process right now. And somebody made a comment on yesterday's transmission about how dropping judgment is really the mastery of the Gemini archetype, and I could not agree more. I mean, that's why people have such a hard time with Gemini, because they don't even have the judgment. They just span from all, throughout all the possibilities of in the immediate environment and take them for what they are without, Sagittarius is the judgment. So, and we are letting go. We're letting go of these paradigms with this full moon lunar eclipse, especially. And when we come into the solar eclipse moment, there's going to be so many opportunities that we can consume and engage with on an intellectual and conceptual level we have to be very mindful of that they're going to take months to unfold. And also too, that like, if you put too much on your plate and you're going to waste it and not eat it all. So that's something else, but we'll talk more about that later. Now let's get back to here. The 6th, this is Sunday. So what do we got going on for the 6th? Well, let's see here. The moon has moved into Taurus. So it's sextile 2 degrees. Where are we at here? So let's go back a little bit. Because first we're going to have a sextile with the moon in Taurus to Jupiter in Pisces, okay? 2 degrees, right? This is when the storm is within us, right? That 2 degrees of Taurus is an electrical storm, and it represents for all of the natural beauty and that Taurus represents, right? Natural rhythm, natural resonance of the material world that Taurus represents. For all of that fixed earth, the contrast to that is that bolt of lightning. And it's nothing more than a natural discharge of electricity that creates balance in the atmosphere. There's too many charged ions one way, and the lightning is the discharge of the energy when the electrons reconfigure themselves to find a balance charged in the molecules of air in our atmosphere. So within us, right, there's the moon again, right? That's the electrical storm within us. There is here is this karmic readjustment. Here is this really karmic visitation that is going to be very difficult to hold, but at the same time, it is also going to fertilize the experience of something new growing. So in a sextile, again, to Jupiter in 2 degrees of Pisces, we can, Jupiter is the benefactor. This is the representative of our collective ideals. And in Pisces is its co-rulership. So it's very powerful here. It's expanding and expanding and expanding on an infinitely expansive, stream of consciousness, ocean of consciousness, going back to source. And so Jupiter is really, specifically either protecting or kind of throwing some people under the bus, because you can't get away from anything in Pisces, right? It's all part of the same soup. So there is a caution and a protection that is activated when we're in Pisces, right? This is where the mystics swim and the psychotics drown. If you are not protecting yourself astrally, spiritually, energetically, even emotionally with your boundaries, then you leave yourself open to being hunted, to being preyed upon, to being somebody else's meal. This is where the psychotic people drown. This is not a judgment. This is just this is just reality, right? People who have psychosis and don't have a handle on themselves in this realm, that is exactly what happens. You get possessed, right? You get taken over. You become engaged in escapism and addiction and things like that. When you are a trained mystic, you're trained shaman, right? This is where the Syrian starseeds are really, really can really help. And if you have that nature within you, again, it's not a marking. where Jupiter is, but it's just to show here that when you are a master of this realm, where you have good energetic boundaries, when you know how to manage yourself in the astral, then Jupiter is going to offer protection, right? Jupiter is the benefactor and the protector of our collective values. So it depends on what your collective value system that you're operating under. What is your truth? So here's the sextile. Jupiter is going to protect and advocate for for those who can't help themselves maybe in this situation, but also when we have this karmic visitation within us that the moon represents, right? And how it feels to be disturbed by it in some way. That bolt of lightning is destructive and disruptive, right? Just like Uranus. And let me tell you what, within this week, I would have to bring up a different chart, and I'm not going to do that right this second, but I'm telling you what, asteroid Ceres is going to meet Uranus, the goddess of the grain. And the Schumann has been really quiet the last couple of days, really, really quiet. Which really worries people who follow the space weather and earthquakes and stuff like that. There was a big 5.9 earthquake off of Gold Beach, which is on the southern coast of Oregon, the Cascades. And somebody one of the people I follow actually that does space weather, geology, all this kind of stuff, one of the things he said is that he's been tracking Mercury retrogrades, and seismic activity starts to rise with a Mercury retrograde. So just be mindful of this as we're about to go into and this could, it might not literally be an earth change or an earthquake, but with Ceres meeting Uranus like this, I would not be surprised. And so it's good to have a plan and to be aware of these things. So we have this karmic visitation. We can apply this moment here, invest it, and invest where Jupiter is, this expansion on this area. We can invest it into, especially protection, into this karmic visitation. Okay. And you have to trust that Jupiter is, if you are in fact under the value system, that Jupiter is protecting. So that is Sunday morning. You can see that right here, 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So right away. And then we have the moon continues to transit through Taurus, right? And this is a comfortable transit once we get past that 2-degree mark, right? And well, it's not totally comfortable. There are definitely some other things we have to contend with, but we do also have this, beautiful sextile with Venus, right? Venus coming into the 6th degree of Cancer, the moon coming into 6 degrees of Taurus. And this is our ability to, we can be like a bridge, right, across the gorge. We can figure out how to bridge the gap within us, right? Because Venus in Cancer is now feathering her nest, right? She is taking the time to really create the container for not just our own growth, but the container is where our character really develops. So taking the time. And Venus, right, she is about harmony and graciousness and generosity and love. And so she is lovingly bringing these aspects together and feathering the nest, making it comfortable, creating a container for our own growth. And again, this in a very palpable, very material way, she rules Venus, right? This is a mutual reception here because the moon is at home in Cancer, Venus is at home in Taurus. They come into the sextile. They're really going to mutually support each other and invest in each other. And this creation of and this feathering of this containment system of our family, the familial matrix, especially in terms of the very palpable material aspects that we value in our lives, making a container here for our relationships, our projects, our resources. We can, when we come to realize how to bridge the gap within us, right? That bridge across a deep gorge. How do we actually utilize the material world to cooperate with each other to create a connection in a very physical way, we can then, these things are mutually beneficial and there's a mutual reception. This is so beautiful by the time we get to Sunday, even though there is a very karmic and very, this karmic visitation, this electrical storm, whatever it is for us, is going to really be very disruptive. But we have a chance here to use the energy of the moon in Taurus and Venus in Cancer to support each other in making our bonds tighter, making them more enticing in some ways, right? Feathering the nest, getting it ready. And I just think this is a really beautiful transit. Now, the sun is then in an opposition to Juno on Rigel, right? In an opposition to Juno in Sagittarius. So again, putting our best foot forward, we have all this Rigel, this Orion energy that we're expressing ourselves through, creating some tension here with this review period about who we're going to be loyal to. What is the nature of our commitments and contractual obligations to a collective paradigm of belief? I think that this opposition here, we're ready to move away from some things, or maybe we're ready to go into some sort of battle, but it has to be with Rigel involved. We have to make sure that it is based on a wisdom, right? And to utilize wisdom and sincerity as we embark on this brave quest. And maybe we're not necessarily quite ready. We're still going over, like, do I want to go into this battle? It's very uncomfortable to go back on these collective paradigms that you're committed to and that you feel like you have a contractual obligation to in some ways, which is what Juno represents. For good or for bad, this is what the contract states and that we have to fulfill it. And God, I can't wait. I'm just going to show you the reading now because it's really substantial. So one of the things I want to point out real quick when it comes to the fixed star energy. So where are we here? Yes. There's fixed star fact, right? This is where Mercury is in a conjunction with, along with the belt of Orion, which is very much about the protection of the belt and a lot of power from the belt. And fact right here in the twig being carried by the dove. This does go back to the beginning of this lunar cycle now that we are really winding it down, now that it is really getting distilled and reduced down to its essence, getting darker in that balsamic moon phase. And we do see that there is some hope, right? There is a communication of hope. There is an influx of hope in our minds and our awareness and our conceptualization of the immediate environment. But we have to be able to, it's going to be so subtle. It's going to be really subtle. And I think that we have to be open and aware of that in order to see it for what it is. Okay. So that's the astrology for the weekend, my friends. And I know that's a mouthful, but it is what it is, isn't it? And so let's look here at what the reading, because I swear to you, I cannot make this shit up. And it's really important that we see this for what it is. Okay, so one of the things we're going to see here very obviously is that the Six of Discs is now our causal reality, but it's reversed. Remember, this was our effect of our causal relationship, right? Cause and effect of our of in the material world outside of us, right? That's the law. That's one of the laws of the universe, cause and effect, right? This is very basic physics here. And so now it's the causal factor, but it's reversed. This is, oh my gosh. And then we have, look, the causal factor now comes back around. We're going full circle and coming back right around. We're in a weird time warp, it seems like, but we do see that the Nine of Swords is still present. This cruelty. Oh boy, this realization is going to be, it's like the realization impacts our ability to be successful materially, but our inability to not take things for granted will lead us right back to this cruelty and having a painful realization. So let's go through this together, because you're going to start to see how this imagery and these archetypes actually weave so beautifully into the astrology for this weekend, and to give us a sense of what it is we actually need, which is some courage, and to be aware that we weave our reality, don't we? So here's our 6 of discs, success, when it's reversed, all right? It's important that we realize this. This is about taking things for granted, a false sense of pride. This is not learning our lesson, but in fact, feeling entitled to things, not learning the lesson of worry in a material way. This is about, like I said, taking things for granted, taking everything for granted. This is our causal factor coming into this weekend here, is not being, not really acknowledging or honoring the material aspect of the worry and the destruction and the failure, okay? Not honoring it at all. This is what comes out for me. So this is our causal factor. We already talked a lot about the 6 of discs yesterday. So when it's reversed like this, we're certainly not learning any lessons. Okay. This is a collective reading here. This is not, if you're not resonating with this, then know that there's other things here that you probably will. And also, too, that there may be a different role for you in this whole process if this doesn't resonate for you. But I have a feeling that most of us it's going to resonate with, because if you think you know what's going on, and that, just like I said at the very beginning, nothing prepares you for the lived experience of these situations, no matter how much you can intellectualize it, okay? So now, in the present moment, another court card in the discs. Still very immature, right? The prince and the princess, they're children, right? They're not fully matured archetypes. So Prince of Discs. Normally, this is from Aries into Taurus. Oh, isn't that interesting? This is where our moon is going to be transiting this weekend, from Aries into Taurus. So when the prince is the heir of Earth, it's much more, where Venus and the Princess of Discs was very earth of earth. Now we're getting our mind involved again, because we are taking things for granted. There's a sense of false pride. Something has not really clicked for us in terms of our material essence. And now we're starting to think about it, and the fact, and this individual is us, and so usually they're very stable, and they're very industrious and thoughtful and inventive. They are, once on their path, it's really going towards their goal, right? You can see that there's movement here because there's air. He's got the Taurus bull pulling the chariot. Again, he's got a globe in one hand, a staff in the other, and there's a lot of circles, right? There's a lot of circular motion here as well, and he's nude. He's got no armor on, and just a helmet with wings as well. So you can see that there is a lot of structural support. There is a sense of protection and innocence, right? The prince is very thoughtful and inventive, but he's also kind of immature. And so this is a person that values comfort and beauty and is patient and is intolerant. Well, you can see that if we take things for granted, if we have a false sense of pride about our material reality and what we can accumulate, we get to this moment where we ourselves really exhibit this stubbornness, this ignorance, there's stagnation, there's corruption, there is a coldness here when it's reversed. And this is really not hard to wrap your head around when you see this progression here. So we at the heart, collectively at the heart here, are really struggling with this air of earth energy, this Aries into Taurus energy, and things are not exactly, it's not comfortable. It's not beautiful. It's not, we're feeling unstable. We're not exactly industrious, and we're not exactly very thoughtful. And in fact, maybe we don't know our goal, and maybe we're not on our path. And I would say that a lot of stubbornness and ignorance is coming through with this 6 of discs and all the other earth-based cards in this reading. So our minds are getting back involved now in this material reality as a result of this taking things for granted and having this false sense of pride, not learning our lesson. And now we're here being like, well, what is exactly my goal? What is my trajectory? What am I going to be inventive and thoughtful about? And again, stubborn, ignorant, stagnant. In the heart of it, okay? Now, when we have the 5 of Keys also reversed, all right? All of these energies are reversed except the outcome. So you could also look at this as an internalized process of all of these energies, but with the 9 of Swords upright, there's a lot of resistance to what's going on. Clearly. I mean, you just have to look at the astrology to see how this would, transpire. So the 5 of Keys, wishes fulfilled. When it's reversed like this, we have to work to change change the circumstances as well as our responses to them. Ooh, here comes that weaving. Here it comes, right? So at the root where we're really able to gather our power or not, right? Regardless of where we stabilize ourselves, we still, once it's there, this is where we're gathering our stabilization from, once the root structure is there. So when it's reversed like this, again, we have to change our response to the circumstances. We have to get ourselves out of lack mentality. And we have to maintain our strength and in our small victories, our inner abundance, right? Keep working on our dreams, not get deterred as this Prince of Discs is clearly going to be. And at the heart of things is being deterred and really questioning because of a serious lack of success in accumulation of material abundance. So, and it's, you see this card with the 6 of Discs. Let me look back real quick. It's the same regardless if it's upright or if it's reversed. And that says a lot because that says that, it's all the same. It's just a matter of perspective, right? Or how we experience it, right? There's the moon, our lived experience and how we respond to it. So at the root energetically, we have to really work at not defining ourselves in the lack right now. And we can draw our power from this place, okay? If we keep this position in mind and not get caught up in the fact that we just aren't getting what we want, right? So as we move up our axis of power, the 6 of Keys also reversed. So now we also have a 6 of Discs, we have a 6 of Keys, we have 5 of Keys, there's chronology, there is conjunction in some ways with these 2 6 of Earth energies, the increscent moon. So when we're looking at this upright, the moon is waxing, the sculptor is creating, he's projecting his own artistic vision into a form, right? Well, when this is reversed like this is the exact opposite, isn't it? It's a phase of decrease. It's a phase of contraction. The moon is waning, which it actually is right now and will be in Taurus, is waning. It's important to conserve our energy. It's important to not be, again, dismayed by a difficult time. And everything moves in cycles, right? Remember that everything moves in cycles. Nothing is stagnant, even though we feel like it's stagnant within us, right? That Prince of Discs. This is where our conscious awareness is, and this is really where we can find the zenith of our power is by consolidating and conserving our energy, right? Realizing that maybe what we have been putting into form this whole time, oh no, that's such a bummer. I ran out of space on my hard drive, and so it just stopped the recording, which is what I put on BitChute. Oh, that's so disappointing. This is such a good transmission right now, and I get so much more traction on BitChute than I do on YouTube. So, damn. Okay, well, I'll still put up what is here. Or I'll just direct people to YouTube, I guess. And so... Oh my God, that totally derailed me. So there's a really interesting example of how you can just be like, oh, well, so that didn't work out the way that I wanted. Conserving energy, knowing that the moon is waning. And in some ways too, we could get caught in this and really feel dismayed and feel disappointed and get frustrated that things are not happening on the timeline that we want. Remember that adolescent frustration that is, where Chiron is right now. Our attention is on the fact that things are waning. And I know that we're going to get some measure of wins, but this is meant to be utilized for later, right? This is not an end all be all in terms of quote unquote wins. that are going to be coming out in June, whatever that means for people. Things are about to shift very bigly. And it may feel like we are losing, right? But it's important to conserve our energy and recognize this and use this instead of getting caught in it. Because ultimately, we're still going to have painful realizations. We're still going to have them. And this is a cycle, right? That just continues to keep going around. And we have to make sense of it, but we also have to acknowledge that, again, these are painful realizations, right? Cruelty, our mind and endless analyzing will only take us so far. Eventually, we have to have the lived experience. And the lived experience can be painful. And it'll never prepare us. And like our mind is never going to prepare us exclusively for this experience. And that's why it's painful, because you eventually have to come to terms with where the mental process takes you. So this is a heavy and very bitter transmission. But we have some really, the power that we get out of this situation is so substantial, and we can really tap into reserves of courage that we didn't even know existed. So when it comes to these wishes fulfilled and really drawing our power from a place that is not of lack, keep working on our dreams, being willing to acknowledge that not everything has fulfilled itself quite yet. Reflection, right? Deep reflection. Being aware of our emotions and the difference between emotions and intuitive voice. Our intuitive voice is calm. It's assuring. It's not flustered. Our emotional compulsions are all of those things, flustered and all over the place, and lack and worry and fear are all these like emotional compulsions. So we have the opportunity to gain a greater clarity and control over our emotions and trust our inner voice. And we may need to really dig deep for this one. Dig deep, because we didn't have an accurate reflection with this full moon lunar eclipse, did we? It was a distortion of normally what this would be, right? Full reflection of our inner experience out so that we can see it for what it is and release what we don't need. Well, there was distortion. There is there's a shadow cast, and we're not going to see the fullness of it until much later. And so this is important that we're going to have to dig a lot deeper in order to get to this place. But it's a really important and potent gift and support right now to keep this in mind. Now, the boar is all about having courage and facing your problems head on. Confront without fear, or confront through the fear, right? Take some deep breaths and realize that there are no real problems, only creative possibilities, which is we will have to dig deep for this one, my friends. I assure you. And the power to face these problems and to emerge victorious is not going to come from within us as ego consciousness. It's going to come through us from source. And the reflection that it represents here, this card represents the reflection. It's going to be this reflection is going to allow us to tap into something that is way deeper and way beyond just our ego consciousness. And when we face our problems head on, when we dig deep for this courage, right? Like what's a boar do? That's what they do. They get into the dirt and dig around in order to find their sustenance. So head on, right? Get your nose in there and start digging around and dig deep for your courage, because it's real. And then when we do that and we really allow this reflection, for as much as it's been distorted, and certainly the yin phase is so important right now with the Mercury retrograde and this lunar eclipse, that it's important that we allow this reflection to really happen so that we can dig deep and get the courage we need to face our problems. And the problems are going to feel very at the root, like we're not getting, that we're living in a sense of lack right now. So as we are embarking here on the next phase of this, which is the 6 of Keys, which is about the projection of our artistic vision of ourself into a form. And we know that that's not really where our attention is right now. And it's certainly important to keep this in mind, the spider is a big part about weaving our reality. So it's saying trust the creative spark and you're feeling and express it through writing stories that inspire and enlighten. Well, expression is a big part of the Gemini archetype. We have the sun now moving into the second half of Gemini, which is about the exteriorization and expression of what we've discovered, usually in a very passionate and forceful way. And certainly when we weave our story together and express it, we can inspire other people. But also too, even deeper than that is, we are weaving our own reality here. And maybe we have to weave it inside of us, in order before it's time to be brought into form, material form. And, we need to go back over some things. Of course, Mercury retrograde, but the weaving of it is where our real power is coming from. Now, the Ark of the Covenant is reversed. Remember why you're here. When it's reversed, it is really suggesting that we've broken a contract with our higher self, that we're not listening, and we're certainly not acting on that contract. And we're avoiding the karmic work, okay? Who doesn't want to avoid a karmic adjustment or readjustment or a confrontation? Nobody, we will bypass till the end of time if we really are given, you know what I mean? If we have no conceptualization of this soul work that we're all here to do. And we can either knowingly be choosing to be directed by our fears and emotional needs, or we can really take this reflection very seriously and wake up and renew our covenant to our higher self and to our soul's mission for being here. And that means about weaving our own reality. And then once we are able to do that, we can move past, I think, the painful realizations that the 9 of Swords is ultimately going to represent for us. But we don't have to necessarily feel that within us. It doesn't have to be our experience necessarily. Now, that's not to say that we somehow get out of it because we are like weaving some reality here that is completely delusional. Well, that definitely goes into a Neptune and Pisces type of relationship here of delusion. This is just being way more aware of what we're here to do and knowing that the karmic readjustment is part of that contract. We chose to come here. We chose to come here, and we have karmic work to do. And if we don't acknowledge that, then yeah, we are in trouble and we don't get past this cruelty in our minds. But if we do acknowledge what we're here to do, put it back on the top of our list of things that we need to pay attention to, and realize that we are here to weave our reality, express ourselves through the catharsis that is coming as a result of this karmic confrontation, then we can be a little bit more, we can see the painful realizations for what they are and be enlightened by it. So yeah. Okay, guys. I think that really covers it for the weekend. Thank you so much for sticking around. This will be available on YouTube. Unfortunately, it won't be on BitChute. So because I don't have the space. That's an interesting idea, isn't it? Not having the space on your hard drive to finish recording what it is that you're trying to record. So I talked about this before, making sure that you have the appropriate, clear, open channels for this emotional energy, the storm energy to flow, right? Having a storm drain that's clean, having a set of channels in which your emotional energy can move freely, because the storm is coming. It's been here, but the real brunt of it, I think, is going to be over this weekend in terms of a karmic readjustment that we all have to contend with. And maybe your role is to just bear witness and hold space for other people to go through their process. That very well could be the case, but you have to know that, and you have to be willing to reconnect to that intuitive voice, your karmic relationship with your higher self, so that you can know what your actual dharma is. So Thank you so much, guys, for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you are interested in a reading or energetic support through Reiki or shamanic energy work in this process, you can book through catalystenergies.net. That is in the description box below. You can connect through social media like Facebook and Telegram, also in the description box below. And as always, have a great weekend. Thank you very much for being here. I love you. Take care of yourselves. Reach out if you need support, and we will touch base again on Monday for the daily medicine transmission after this incredibly karmic and disruptive weekend. I love you guys. I'll see you on Monday. Take care.